Satya, mind, body, spirit, health, and healing. In today's TMS talk with Dr. Shubiner and Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, we get to take a look at the interesting and revealing topics of pain and illness as teacher and even gift, triggers and the nervous system's role in pain, and the true root causes of pain and illness. After the talk, I will share my interpretation and experience of working with these concepts and living them in my own life.
You're touching on a concept that often comes up on this show. And I say this with compassion, with, I hope, a great deal of sensitivity. But many people have shared with me, when the mics are running, if they have got through to the other side of something, they'll say, my disease was the best thing that happened to me. My cancer was my greatest teacher. And again, these are people who have got through to the other side. So I understand if you've had cancer and you've had real problems with it, and or someone's had a friend or a family member who's died from cancer. I understand that. I'm not trying to in any way invalidate that.
Of course.
But what you're really speaking to for me is this idea that our pain, our chronic pain, is a signal. And if we can get to the root cause of what that signal is, the learnings we're going to get from that will not only help our pain, but it will help every other aspect of our life as well.
The pain is not the problem, it's the solution. What a weird thing to say. It's the solution that our brain has come up with to alert us to a problem. It's a signal, it's a message, and it's a protector. It's a guide. Your brain is saying, like, look, I'm worried about you, there's all this stuff going on. I'm worried about you. There's something wrong. There's something amiss. And here's a signal for you to stop doing what you're doing, stop and think, stop and evaluate, whatever the message is. And oftentimes, I remember there was a woman, I was on a video call with a bunch of people. A young woman was having neck pain. And it had started when she was in her university days. And I just asked her to close her eyes and put her hand over her heart and think about that person who was her, 8 or 10 years ago, whatever it was. And think about what that person, what she needed, what she was going through, what was happening in her life at the time that the neck pain started. And she just started to cry, because she felt compassion for herself. A lot of people have trouble with that, right? She felt compassion for herself at that age and what she was going through and how much pressure she was putting on herself and how hard she was working and other things that were going on in her life. And all of a sudden, it made sense to her why she got the neck pain at that time. And what happened as she started to cry, as she had her hand over her heart, as she was turning those tears into compassion for herself, neck pain disappeared. Just like that. It's amazing.
You mentioned that it's important to properly evaluate a patient who's suffering with chronic pain because, of course, there might be a structural component that is amenable to some sort of treatment.
Yes, of course.
And, related to that, you mentioned the brain is what creates the pain. Do we need to sort of outline what happens, right? What happens when we touch a hot stove? Is it worth us kind of unpicking that to help people understand that?
Yeah, for sure. The signals that go to the brain go up through the peripheral nervous system, through the spinal cord, into the brain, into several centers of the brain. And the different centers of the brain have different functions, somatosensory centers and emotional centers and thought centers and memory centers. All those things are activated when you get these kinds of nerve signals coming up to the brain. And there's an immediate, and this is all subconscious. You're not thinking like, oh, I hit myself. Oh, should I get pain or not? You can't think that. It's not a conscious process. It's all happening on a subconscious level. And so most of the time when you have an injury, the brain will immediately turn on that pain as a signal. Just stop. Stop doing what you're doing. Get help. Swear. Do whatever you have to do to take care of yourself. So that's what happens in an acute injury. But sometimes those signals are overridden. In an acute injury, the brain may not activate pain because there's something else going on. I like to say if you're running across the field and you break an ankle, you're likely to get pain. If you're running across the field and break an ankle, but you're being chased by a lion, you probably wouldn't get pain in that situation. So there's a decision mode that's going on in the brain that can override that. The point is that injuries that occur that cause pain, which is almost all the time, those injuries heal because our body always heals. But what happens is that sometimes the danger signal of what's going on in people's lives is also activated through memory, through prior injuries, through stress that's going on in our life that can activate this danger signal to make the pain continue even though the injury heals. So we see this all the time. That's why I was asking you, what happened in the aftermath of hurting your back initially? Did the pain go away for a while and then it started coming back? Well, if the pain went away for a while and started coming back, chances are the injury healed. This makes sense. But the neural circuits had been learned by the brain and then had gotten activated. So the brain then learns, has this pathway that's sometimes becomes a default pathway of neural circuits that keeps turning on pain every time you wake up in the morning or every time you bend over as a conditioned response. And so then those neural circuits become activated sometimes all the time or coming and going or in whatever pattern occurs. But those neural circuits are real and they're causing real pain. But it's not because of the injury. So that's the critical thing that we and physicians and PTs and everyone need to understand, to look carefully, to really listen to people of what happened with the injury, what happened with the healing, and what is the history of the pain. Because if the pain is turning on and off, structurally, if you break your arm, the pain doesn't turn on and off.
Yeah.
If you go away on vacation, it goes away, and you come back to work, it comes back again. That's a neural circuit problem. If the pain is triggered by stress, if the pain is triggered by the wind or cold or the weather, there's all these signs and clues that we have as physicians and other professionals to listen to people intently and make sure that we've ruled out a structural problem. I'm a physician. We're both physicians. We know that the last thing we want to do is miss a tumor, miss an infection, miss an inflammatory condition, miss something. We desperately want to avoid doing that.
Yeah. As you say that, I think about irritable bowel syndrome. IBS, super, super common. And for years, it was that diagnosis of exclusion. Oh, well, you've got these problems, these stomach cramps, this constipation, this diarrhea, bloating, whatever it might be. But your scans are all fine. The bloods are all fine. Oh, you must have irritable bowel syndrome. But there's something inherently wrong with that sort of phraseology because we're not giving weight to the fact that, look, you've got really bad symptoms that are affecting the quality of your life. Now, from a physical standpoint, okay, we've ruled out the serious stuff. Okay, that's great news. But now we need to start digging into the emotional stuff. What's been going on in your life? We miss out that part. So the initial part happens, oh, there's nothing seriously wrong with you. But actually, that's very condescending because actually, what do you mean? For many patients, what do you mean there's nothing physically wrong with me? I can't go to work. I have to open my bowels 20 times a day. It's awkward for me at work. It's socially embarrassing. But the doctor's saying, there's nothing wrong with you. Do you know what I mean? So exactly. I think this is such a big point. You said about if you're running across a field and you hurt your ankle, whether your brain decides to give you a pain signal is going to depend on the context. Right? I think that's really powerful. If the context is a lion is chasing you, your brain which is always trying to predict the future based on the past, is going to be like, hey, we have no time for pain. I need you to keep running now. Whereas if you can stop, it might go, hey, listen, let's give him pain so that he stops. Like, is that an oversimplification?
No, that's
Is that what happens?
That's exactly what happens. Yeah.
And compare that to endurance running, right? Or endurance events, because
Yeah.
I think many people may be familiar with this experience of, I don't know, people always say, like David Goggins, this former, I think, US Navy SEAL in America, who's known for doing all kinds of ultra endurance events. I think he has said something to the effect of, when you think you can't go on, you're not even 40% of the way there. In terms of you've got so much capacity left that you don't even know. No, I don't know if that's based on science or just his viewpoints, but I think that kind of fits in here.
Yeah, Tim Noakes is an exercise physiologist from South Africa, and he's written about this, and he calls it the governor. And there's a governor, and it's like up there. And at some point you're hitting the wall. At some point you're saying, "Oh, I can't go on." But it's a feeling. It's a protection. Again, the brain is protecting you. It's saying, like, hey, why are you doing that? It's way too much. You can't handle it. Everyone talks to themselves. All great athletes talk to themselves. But everyone talks to themselves. If you think you're not talking to yourself, you're the one who's crazy. Because we're always giving ourselves messages. And if we're saying to ourselves, oh, my back is always going to be bad, that's a message that's making the brain make it worse and worse over time. If you're saying to yourself, I can't handle this marathon, or I can't handle this 5K, or whatever, that message is going to affect how you feel and how tired you are and how much you can run. Literally will do that, because the brain has power over our muscles and over our sensations and over our feelings. That's just how the brain and the body work. And so if we can really understand, and great athletes understand it, they say, oh, yeah, I know, I'm really tired. That's okay. I can handle this. And then they keep going.
Sure enough, I have found that pain and illness have been my greatest teachers. It has certainly been the strongest catalyst I have ever had for change, and possibly the only thing that could have motivated the magnitude of changes I have recently made in my life. Now let's talk about triggers and the root cause. Triggers are typically something that presents a challenge to our nervous system, such as changes in the weather. Triggers can also be trying emotional circumstances in our lives. Triggers are the external happenings that we tend to believe are causing our pain. The true cause of our pain is always the sum total store of negative, repressed emotion we are carrying. Once this has been sufficiently released, the external stresses in our lives will no longer hold the same power over us. One of the biggest realizations I had in those early days was how much sense the pain actually did make, given the circumstances of my life. The pain is very real, but what we need to understand is what the true root cause of it is. This way we can begin to heal. I can definitely relate with the experience of having doctors basically tell you nothing is wrong. Then when you continue pressing them for answers, you inevitably end up with some sort of broad sweep diagnosis, basically saying, we don't know, but here you go. If this has been your experience, just know that you are far from alone, and you can be grateful that you are finding your way towards true healing.